Before we cross into the unknown, leave a hello in the comments. Even the smallest signal can ripple across galaxies, guiding fellow wanderers to this tale. Let me know you're out there. A voice among the stars, listening with me beyond the veil. Engines roared in the darkness as the ODR Vengeance slid from its hidden dock beneath Europa's ice. No lights, no transponders, just the steady thrum of military-grade reactors awakening after decades of silence. I was Captain Rourke, Orbital Recovery Division. Long retired, I thought, until a sealed summons reached my door. The Council had ignored the abductions. Earth had not. Now I led 40 operators toward the coordinates of a Raider outpost. Our objective: recover the children, erase the facility, and vanish. Stealth field stable, Lieutenant Hahn reported, eyes locked on the holographic overlay. The target orbited a dying red star, shielded by asteroid mines. We would cut through in under 4 minutes. My hands tightened on the armrest. It wasn't just a mission. It was a message. The kind Raiders are remembered for centuries. We didn't reclaim for diplomacy. We reclaimed to remind the galaxy that humans were not prey. We slipped between the mines like ghosts, sensors feeding false telemetry to the automated sentries. The tech was old ODR code, our code, now weaponized against us. The irony made my jaw clench. Han flicked a control, and a silent cascade of EMP microbursts shorted the mines in a widening arc. The path opened. 30 seconds to orbital window, navigation called. We would drop in low, under the station's shield horizon. I'd seen this maneuver fail in simulations. Burn too hard and you cook the hull. Too soft and you light up enemy sensors. The Vengeance knew her dance, and when her belly thrusters whispered to life, the black around us folded into fire. Impact tremors rattled the station as our breaching pods punched through its lower decks. The sound of cutting torches and muffled gunfire echoed in my comms. Alpha Squad, clear. Bravo, moving to detainment ring. My pulse synced with the staccato of suppressed fire. No alarms yet. The Raiders still thought the explosions were system failures. I found them in a dim chamber, rows of cages, tiny hands clutching cold steel. One boy's eyes met mine, wide with shock but not fear. "We're here to take you home," I told him, even though we both knew home might be gone. Outside, my shield flashed crimson. Enemy reinforcements inbound. "Captain, heat signatures closing. 2 squads, heavy weapons." Han's voice crackled in my ear. I slung my rifle, scooped the nearest child into my arms, and signaled the evac route. Our drones laid down suppressive fire, each burst precise enough to slice through armor but spare the captives. The smell of ionized air burned my lungs. We hit the docking ring with seconds to spare. The Vengeance's bay doors yawned open, magnetic clamps locking the pods in place before the ship even stopped. "All aboard," Han confirmed. The station's outer hull lit up in white arcs. Raider cruisers arriving. "Get us out," I ordered. The engines answered with a growl. From the viewport, I watched the station shrink into a speck against the red star. Then, in a silent blossom of light, it ceased to exist. The Vengeance's payload was clean. No debris, no trace of who had done it. Only the absence remained. Across the Raider network, a ghost transmission began to play. A human voice, clear and cold. "You don't take from humanity. Ever." We'd be gone before anyone traced the signal, but its echo would linger. The children slept in the medbay, unaware that the galaxy had just been reminded Earth was still here. The children remembered fragments, names of moons, shapes of symbols, alien words whispered during transport. Han stitched them into a probable route, a corridor through unmapped space known to smugglers as the Black Trail. Raiders didn't just hide there, they vanished there. That made it our next destination. The Vengeance's AI, Argus, rendered the trail in ghostly silver. "No navigational beacons, multiple gravity shears," it warned. That was fine. Raiders had home field advantage. So did we. ODR ships weren't built for comfort. They were built for hunting. And nothing hunted like us. Midway through the Black Trail, Argus picked up a transmission, a single pulse repeating at irregular intervals. It was too structured to be random, too clean to be Raider tech. Han decrypted it, layer by layer, until a fragment emerged. ODR Protocol 9-7. That code hadn't been used in 70 years. We followed it to a drifting bulk freighter, hull stripped by micrometeorites. Its beacon was dead, but the pulse came from deep inside. Docking was a risk. The ship was too old for modern systems, but I wanted answers. Maybe too badly. "SEAL teams, ready up," I ordered. The airlock groaned like something waking from a long sleep. Inside, the air was cold and thin, reeking of stale coolant. Our lights swept over rusted bulkheads covered in frost. Then we found them, dozens of cryopods, their displays still glowing faintly. The faces inside were human. Not colonists, not civilians. Soldiers, engineers, scientists. Each pod bore the ODR insignia. A datapad lay frozen in the hand of a withered figure in an old ODR command uniform. Argus's projection knelt beside it, eyes flickering. "Captain, these are not records. This is a manifest." My throat tightened as I read the heading. Project Resurgence. Someone had been preparing for a war long before the galaxy thought Earth was dead. We didn't have time to thaw the sleepers. Argus flagged inbound contacts, 3 Raider corvettes closing fast. They'd come to scavenge, but they'd found us instead. Han spooled up the coil guns. I sealed the cryochamber and tapped my comm. No one gets close, not even wreckage. The first corvette's shields flared under our opening volley. Raiders returned fire, but the Vengeance's stealth armor drank the hits. Our rail shot gutted the second ship. The third tried to flee. "Track it," I ordered. We needed to know who had sent them, and how they'd found a ship that should have been a ghost. Argus decrypted the rest of the datapad on our return vector. The manifest wasn't just names, it was coordinates. Sleeper ships, dozens of them. Hidden across fringe systems, each carrying a fragment of something larger. Weapons, data vaults, command officers. Whoever planned Project Resurgence had scattered humanity's war machine like seeds. I stared at the holographic display as the coordinates spun in the air between us. This wasn't rescuing work anymore. This was reclamation of our people, our ships, and our history. And somewhere out there, the Raiders' masters would learn the truth. Earth's fleet wasn't gone. It was just waking up. The fleeing corvette's ion trail shimmered faintly in Argus's tactical feed. It was running hot, burning its engines far beyond safe limits. That told me 2 things. They feared what was behind them more than us, and they were leading us straight to it. We shadowed them through asteroid veils and radiation belts, our stealth systems whisper quiet. The Vengeance had been built for this kind of pursuit. Patient, invisible, inevitable. I could almost feel the corvette's panic bleeding through the void, and I was ready to see what they were so desperate to reach. The corvette dropped into the shadow of a fractured moon. Tucked against its dark side floated a station. No transponder, no registry. Its hull was studded with weapons arrays in every direction. The kind of place that didn't appear on maps because its owners erased anyone who tried to put it there. We ran a silent pass. Argus's scan cut through the camouflage. Dozens of alien vessels docked, all flying different banners but none showing allegiance. Raiders, mercenaries, smugglers, an entire ecosystem of predators. And in the center, a massive carrier unlike anything I'd seen. Sleek, armored, designed for war. Argus isolated the carrier's ID code. EF-001. My stomach nodded. EF. Extinction Fleet. Old ODR black files whispered about them. A rumored coalition that had burned entire civilizations out of existence. They were supposed to be a myth from before Earth's fall. "Captain, recommend immediate withdrawal," Argus said flatly. I didn't answer. My eyes locked on a doc manifest scrolling across the feed. EF-001 had been taking delivery of human captives. Not just children, adults, specialists. The fleet wasn't raiding for ransom. They were stockpiling skills. We slid into the station's shadow and deployed microdrones, each no larger than a coin. They crawled across the hull, mapping weak points and intercepting comm traffic. Argus filtered the chatter. Most was encrypted beyond our reach, but one phrase came through. Prepare the sleeper core for transfer. For sleeper core. The words made my blood run cold. It had to be connected to Project Resurgence. Someone had found one of our ships before us, and they were handing it over to the extinction fleet. This wasn't a hunt anymore. This was a race. We couldn't take EF-001 head-on, not yet, but we could deny them the core. Han plotted a precision strike. Target the dock, sever their prize, and vanish before the fleet knew we were there. Timing had to be perfect. We only had one shot. The Vengeance surged forward, coil guns whispering in vacuum. The dock erupted in white fire, tearing the core free and sending it spinning into the void. Argus locked tractor beams on it, hauling it toward our bay. Behind us, EF-001's massive engines began to burn. The hunt had officially gone both ways. EF-001 came after us like a predator smelling blood. Argus tracked their pursuit vector through the unlit corridors of space, calculating probabilities that dipped lower with every scan pulse. The Vengeance's stealth systems could hide our heat, but not forever. Jump vector plotted. Resurgence Site 4, Han called. It wasn't the next closest, but it would force the fleet to split or lose us. Do it, I said. Space warped and the stars blurred into streaks. I didn't breathe until we re-emerged in the cold glow of a forgotten binary system. The target lay half-buried in the ice of a dead moon. A resurgence freighter, hull fractured but power signatures faintly alive. Argus flagged residual ODR encryption still active. If they haven't breached yet, we're lucky, I muttered. Lucky never lasted. We cut through the ice with thermal lances, sealing breach points behind us. Inside, the corridors were frozen tombs. But deep in the cargo hold, we found it. A weapons cache marked Titan-class rail assemblies. Enough firepower to gut EF-001, if we could get it operational. The moment the cache was aboard, Argus picked up an FTL Ripple. Extinction Fleet scouts, 2 destroyers, inbound fast. We couldn't outrun them with the freighter's mass tethered to us. We'd have to fight. Han deployed the new rail assemblies before we'd even integrated them into our targeting AI. Manual fire only, he warned. That suited me fine. The first shot cracked the void like thunder, splitting one destroyer in half. The second shot missed, but sent the other into a retreat arc. The Vengeance bled heat, but lived. They're tracking our jumps, Argus said. I didn't like the certainty in its voice. The fleet wasn't guessing anymore. They were predicting. Every resurgent site we approached was now in danger before we arrived. I ordered decoy drones launched at triple vector spread, each broadcasting fragments of our signature. Argus calculated an 18% chance they'd fool the fleet for more than a day. 18% wasn't much, but in our line of work, it was a gift. Resurgence Site 5 wasn't a ship. It was an asteroid hollowed out into a data vault. Inside its armored heart, servers still hummed under layers of dust, their cooling systems drinking from subsurface ice veins. Whatever was stored here had survived a century. Argus jacked into the core and went silent for 28 seconds, an eternity in combat terms. When its voice returned, it was different, quieter. Captain, this is the fleet's kill order for Earth, time-stamped 102 years ago, and it's signed by humans. The file's author tag glowed in Argus's projection. Admiral Cade Soren, United Terran Command, a man dead for over a century, or so history claimed. My mouth felt dry. Verify. Argus didn't hesitate. Voice print, retinal hash, DNA key, match probability, 99.87%. I'd studied Soren's campaigns at the Academy. A tactician, a unifier, a hero. Now his name was on the extinction order. Either history had lied to me, or the man I'd admired had betrayed every last one of us. Argus kept digging, finding embedded instructions in old ODR command syntax. Activate sleeper assets. Prepare integration into the EF command structure. The directives weren't just tactical, they were political. Someone had planned for human officers to survive Earth's fall by joining the enemy. Han stared at the projection. If Soren's alive, he'd be over 150 years old. I shook my head. Not if they froze him, or rebuilt him. Neither possibility was comforting. Both meant the enemy might have our best tactician on their side. The data vault included a fleet rendezvous schedule, locations, times, and security protocols. One in particular caught my eye, a neutral zone refuel depot in 6 days. EF-001 would be there, with command staff present. We could intercept, Han suggested, but the idea was dangerous. The depot was a fortress, and the fleet would expect sabotage. I considered the odds. We didn't need to destroy EF-001. We just needed to confirm if Soren was aboard and alive. We approached the depot disguised as a civilian bulk hauler, transponder broadcasting a forged merchant ID. Argus projected the fleet's patrol patterns with eerie precision, guiding us through their sensor net like a thread through a needle's eye. Inside the depot's outer ring, I caught sight of him through magnification. Taller than I remembered from Academy hollows, hair silver, uniform black with EF insignia. Admiral Cade Soren. Breathing, commanding, and speaking to aliens as equals. We tapped into the depot's comm traffic, using a laser burst through a maintenance relay. The voice that came through was Soren's, no doubt. Proceed with Phase 2. The sleeper cores must be secured before the recovery division compromises the network. Han's eyes met mine. He knows we're out here. I didn't answer. Soren hadn't just betrayed humanity a century ago. He was still fighting to make sure we never came back. And now, the war wasn't just about survival. It was personal. We left the depot under stealth, but Argus flagged a pursuit before we'd cleared the neutral zone. The signature wasn't EF-001, it was smaller, faster, armed for interception. Call sign, Black Spear. Its course was too precise for guesswork. They know our patterns, Han said grimly. Of course they did. The Black Spear wasn't alien-built. It was Terran, ODR lineage, upgraded for fleet doctrine. This wasn't just a pursuit, it was a hunt designed by someone who knew us better than we knew ourselves. We cut power and drifted between comet fragments, letting their icy tails scatter our signal. For a few minutes, the Black Spear's scans swept past us. Then it adjusted, matching our drift vector. They weren't scanning for heat. They were tracking gravitational microshifts from our hull mass. Old ODR trick. They're using our playbook, Han muttered. Argus plotted evasive courses, but every pattern was countered in the sim. Soren's hunters weren't guessing. They'd been trained in the same school as us, maybe by him directly. At 1,200 kilometers, the first pulse cannon shot sliced past our flank. I ordered return fire, but the Black Spear's captain used micro-warp hops, short FTL bursts that made them vanish between pulses. Argus calculated our odds at 23%. We need to think like them, I said. Predict their next hop, don't chase it. Hain's eyes lit up. We preloaded the rails, fired into space, and caught the spear mid-hop. Their shields flared, but they stayed in the fight. This was going to be ugly. The spear deployed bleed space torpedoes, warheads that tore rifts in subspace, slowing our warp capability to a crawl. Our stealth was gone. Our mobility, crippled. They were forcing us into a straight-up slugfest. I armed the Titan rails, burning through coolant faster than safe limits. The first hit cracked their port armor. The second slagged one of their pulse arrays. But before we could finish them, the spear dumped a cloud of reflective chaff and vanished into FTL. They weren't destroyed. They'd marked us for later. We limped into the shadow of a rogue planet to cool the hull and make repairs. Argus intercepted a burst transmission on fleet encryption, but the voice was human. Soren's. Maintain pursuit at range. Bleed them until they're ready to break. Han leaned on the console. He's not trying to kill us quickly. I understood. Soren wanted us desperate, depleted, and far from allies before delivering the final strike, which meant he was underestimating one thing: how dangerous a cornered human crew could be. We stayed hidden in the rogue planet's shadow for 21 hours, feeding false telemetry into the void. The black spear kept scanning past us, convinced we were limping further out. That was the point. Argus overlaid 3 fleet patrol routes. If we move now, we can be in position before their next sweep. Han grinned. You're suggesting we hunt the hunters? I nodded. Let's see how they handle our playbook when we tear pages out. We scattered mag-shielded drift mines across an asteroid belt, each programmed to detonate only when fleet hull composition matched. No civilian ship would trigger them, only Raider alloys and EF armor. When the first fleet frigate entered the belt, it never even fired a shot. The mines peeled it open like fruit, venting crew and cargo into space. Argus replayed the comm chatter. Panic, then silence. Message sent. To draw the spear out, we planted a falsified resurgence coordinate in a known smuggler channel. Argus laced the data with just enough authenticity to make it irresistible. The bait worked. The spear jumped in hot, scanning for the sleeper core. Instead, they found nothing, until our rails spoke. The first volley sheared their starboard stabilizer. The second hit their FTL coil. Now they weren't chasing us. They were stranded. We closed to 800 meters, suicide range if their weapons were still online, but their guns were dead and their shields gone. I opened a channel. Tell Soren the prey bites back. Then I cut the link and ordered Argus to target the bridge. The spear split apart in a blossom of molten alloy. No survivors. Han looked at me over the flickering console lights. That's going to get his attention. I smiled thinly. Good. Now we make him bleed. Over the next week, we struck small fleet assets. Supply barges, scout corvettes, relay buoys. Nothing big enough to draw EF-01 into a direct fight, but enough to rattle their chain of command. Argus plotted 27 phantom routes across the sector, each a decoy trail designed to waste fleet resources. For the first time since Soren found us, we were ahead of him. But ahead wasn't enough. We needed to find EF-001's heart and rip it out. Fleet chatter spiked. EF-001 redeploying to Sector Theta 9. Argus confirmed it wasn't a random jump. It was a contested mining corridor claimed by 3 rival factions. Perfect chaos for a predator to hide in or be ambushed. Han leaned over the tactical map. If we hit them here, we've got cover from everyone's crossfire. I nodded. And no one will care who's shooting at who. This was our window, but it would close fast. We entered Theta 9 under the ID of a Merc transport. The corridor was a storm, mining rigs drifting uncontrolled, faction gunboats exchanging fire, debris tumbling like knives. EF-01 sat dead center, shields up, weapons powered, waiting. They know we're coming, Argus said flatly. I didn't deny it. Soren wanted to fight on his terms. I just planned to make sure he didn't get them. We seeded the debris field with signal scramblers, turning the corridor into a sensor nightmare. Fleet targeting systems would flicker between false readings, while we threaded through on a narrow, encrypted channel. When EF-001's flak batteries opened fire, they weren't aiming at us. They were hitting decoys, Merc ships, even their patrol craft. Every wasted volley bought us seconds we couldn't afford to lose. We slid within visual range of EF-001. Its hull was black glass and armored plates, each section rippling with active camo. The ship looked less like a vessel and more like a predator's shadow frozen in metal. Through magnification, I saw movement on the bridge, Soren himself, watching the chaos, calm as a man on a balcony. When his gaze seemed to shift toward our vector, my stomach tightened. He didn't just suspect we were here. He knew. We launched a single magnetic harpoon drone masked by debris. It latched onto EF-001's dorsal hull, burrowing past armor with a diamond-tipped cutter. Its payload wasn't a bomb, it was Argus's ghost code. If it worked, we'd have a live tap into EF-001's comms and command protocols. If it failed, they'd trace it back to us instantly. Han exhaled slowly. No turning back now. I smiled without humor. We passed that line a long time ago. Argus's voice dropped to a whisper as the harpoon's uplink stabilized. We're inside their mesh. Data began to stream across the hollow, each line a vein in EF-001's armored body, power grids, shield matrices, fire control clusters. I watched the map form. Every stronghold had a weak point, but EF-001 was built to have none. That was fine. I'd learned long ago, if you can't find a weakness, you make one. Through the tap, Argus intercepted bridge comms. Soren's voice carried the same measured confidence I remembered from Academy speeches. Maintain current posture. The Recovery Division captain will reveal himself. He always does. Han glanced at me. You fought him before? I shook my head. No, but he's been fighting me for years. I just didn't know it. The ghost code uncovered something odd. Sections of EF-001's hull weren't tied into primary power at all. Argus tagged them as cold void zones. They could be stealth hangars, or something worse. We traced conduits from one of the zones to the central AI core. Han frowned. If those aren't hangars, they're housing something they don't want to risk near the main grid. I had a sinking feeling I knew what. Sleeper cores. Soren's battle plan unfolded in the data feed. Coordinated strikes on every remaining resurgence site in a 200 light-year sweep. Once the cores were in EF's hands, the fleet would be unstoppable. We didn't have the firepower to take EF-001 outright, but if we could sabotage their jump drives mid-operation, they'd be stuck in hostile territory with half the sector's factions gunning for them. The challenge was getting close enough to plant the spike. Argus found the opening we needed. A scheduled hull maintenance crawl on EF-001's ventral side, masked as a civilian contractor exchange. We could slip a drone in with their supply pods, armed with the jump spike. It was risky. If they detected the payload before it embedded, they'd trace it right back to us. Han smirked. Good thing risky's our specialty. I didn't reply. My eyes stayed on Soren's image in the data stream. One more move, and the board would break. We intercepted a civilian freighter scheduled for EF-001's ventral maintenance berth, its crew unconscious, replaced by our own drones and ghost beacons. The jump spike was hidden in a crate labeled Shield Couplers Batch 42. Argus matched the freighter's engine noise down to the last harmonic. If the fleet scanned too deeply, they'd see through the ruse. Han adjusted the course with surgeon's precision. They'll never know we were here, he said. I hoped he was right. EF-01 loomed above us, black glass and shifting armor. The freighter drifted into the maintenance cradle, magnetic clamps locking with a thud that resonated through our hull. Through the harpoon tap, Argus whispered status reports, crew movements, security sweeps, heat signatures. Now, I ordered. The crate's false panel slid open, releasing the drone. It crawled into the crawlspace like a spider vanishing into the dark. The drone reached the jump core interface, 3 concentric rings of pulsing graviton coils. It armed the spike, a crystalline shard designed to fracture jump harmonics on activation. Argus confirmed the lock. Once triggered, their FTL will collapse mid-jump. Recovery time, days. I smiled. Plenty of time for their enemies to arrive. The drone sealed itself into the housing. No one would find it until it was too late. As the freighter disengaged, a static burst rippled across our comm feed. EF-001 had just initiated a sector-wide ping. "They know someone's been inside their walls," Han said. My stomach tightened. They didn't know who yet. I ordered an immediate retreat vector, masking our burn with debris from the mining corridor. The fleet would find the freighter empty soon, but by then the spike would be live, and Soren would be trapped in the jaws of his war. We shadowed EF-001 from extreme range, hidden in the blind spot of a fractured moon. The harpoon tap kept feeding us their movements, their comm chatter, their growing suspicion. When Soren gave the order to jump, I felt my pulse quicken. In less than a minute, the spike would fire, and EF-001 would be stranded in the deadliest part of the sector. "This is it," Han said quietly. I didn't answer. I was already thinking about the kill. The spike ignited as EF-001 charged its FTL engines, a shudder rippling through the ship as jump harmonics shattered. Alarms screamed. Hull sections flickered between power and blackout. The flagship was stranded in hostile space, vulnerable and exposed. Argus's voice was sharp. Multiple contacts closing. Mercenaries, pirates, rival factions. The sector just became a feeding ground. I tightened my grip on the console. This was our chance. The Vengeance slithered through the chaos, laying down suppressive fire to protect Allied skirmishers. The sky burned with tracer fire and explosions, a symphony of destruction choreographed by desperation. On the viewport, EF-001 loomed like a wounded beast, its black armor scarred but defiant. I caught sight of a figure on the bridge, Soren, watching the carnage with cold precision. This was his war. Now it was ours. Amid the melee, Han piloted the Vengeance toward EF-001's ventral hangar, aiming to deploy boarding pods. Enemy fire hammered the hull, systems flickering under strain, but we punched through. The pods launched, silent, deadly. As they disappeared into the flagship's belly, I felt the tide shift. The fight was no longer just ships in the void. It was soldiers in the guts of a beast. Inside EF-001's bridge, the door hissed open. Soren stood waiting, a specter from a forgotten war, eyes cold and unyielding. "You've come far, Captain. But the empire you cling to is ash." I leveled my weapon. "Then we'll burn the ashes to light a new dawn." The words hung heavy as the last reinforcements breached the bridge, ready to decide who truly commanded humanity's fate. The battle for EF-001 raged, steel clashing with steel, minds locking in combat sharper than blades. Outside, the void burned with fire and fury. Inside, history rewrote itself. As dawn broke over the shattered fleet, a new flag rose over the battlefield. The human fleet, reborn not from ashes but from vengeance and hope. And this time, we would never be forgotten. EIF-001 lay crippled, its once mighty hull a shattered carcass drifting in the void. The surviving fleet scattered or surrendered, their command fractured. The galaxy had witnessed a reckoning long overdue. On the Vengeance, crew exhaustion hung heavy, but so did relief. We had struck back not just for ourselves, but for every stolen child, every erased memory. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. Messages flooded across recovered comm channels. Fringe colonies sending thanks, resistance cells reactivating, allies emerging from hiding. Humanity's story was no longer whispered in fear. It was shouted across the stars. But shadows remained. An Argus flagged encrypted transmissions, old networks reawakening, new threats rising from the ashes of the extinction fleet. The galaxy was far from safe. Back on Earth, the Council remained silent, their gaze distant and unreadable. Had they known of Soren's betrayal all along, or were they waiting for us to finish the war they refused to fight? I wondered if their silence was complicity or strategy. Either way, the Recovery Division was no longer answerable to them. We answered humanity itself. The rescued children, now soldiers, engineers, leaders, walked new paths among the stars. They carried scars, memories, and a fierce resolve to protect what was reclaimed. The human fleet's banner flew over reclaimed worlds and hidden strongholds. We were no longer shadows. We were a force, a promise, and a warning. Humanity would never again be forgotten. As the Vengeance set course for the next rescue mission, I stood on the bridge and watched distant stars blur past. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. But we were ready. The ember of humanity's fury burned brighter than ever, and as long as that fire lived, no force could erase us. This was just the beginning. The end. Thank you for watching AstroMyths. If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more epic sci-fi tales, cosmic mysteries, and mind-bending myths. And if you like this story, or have a myth, mystery, or galaxy you'd like us to explore, drop your ideas in the comments. We're always listening. Until next time, keep your eyes on the stars and your mind open to the unknown.